In this video, I'm building a wall-mounted bathroom shelf with built-in towel storage. All of the components are carved using my desktop CNC machine, along with the assistance of other woodworking tools like my table saw and sanders. If you're a hobby CNC user and want to build one yourself, the full build plans are linked down below in the video description. I'm Justin, and welcome back to Aquavita Woodworks. Let's go build it. In order to build this project, the first step was obviously to design it, and in order to do that, I like to use SketchUp, which is a basic 3D modeling program. The design that I settled on has a shelf at the top with 2 vertical bars or rails that should hold 3 or 4 rolled up bath towels. My downstairs bathroom currently has no storage space, so I plan on replacing these 2 decorative shelves above my toilet with this hopefully much more functional design. A closer look at the shelf will show that all of its components are held together with mortise and tenon joints instead of pocket screws or nails. I figured I might as well try to make this as durable as possible since it's probably going to be installed in my house for at least the next few decades. If I zoom into one of the mortises, you'll notice that the corners look kind of funny and aren't perfectly square. Because this is a CNC project and CNC end mills are round, they're not able to cut square inside corners. In order to remedy this issue, I add what are called dog bones into each of the corners, which allow a smaller CNC bit to make room for a squared-edged tenon. Once the design was finalized, I grouped the parts into 3 components, which I decided to label the rails, top shelf, and brackets. I then laid those components out on the same plane and exported them as 2D images so I could import them into my CAD program and start assigning toolpaths. Before going into any depth on what CNC bits to use and what toolpaths are required, I'm going to cut my stock down to size. I don't actually know what kind of wood this is since I salvaged it from an old bookshelf, but it seems pretty solid and it's already 3/4 inch thick, which is exactly what I need for this project. Using my table saw, I cut down the pieces to size according to the cut list, which I'll post on the screen right now if you're curious. Overall, it's extremely simple. And with our components cut down to size, let's dive into how to carve these on the CNC, starting off with the rails. In my CAD program, I assigned an 1/8 inch downcut bit to run a pocket toolpath at 0.375 inch depth that will carve out 2 grooves across the entire component. When clamping the wood to the machine, make sure that your clamps aren't in the way, and then set your Z height using whatever method you prefer. The toolpath should take only about 4 minutes. Once off the machine, I need to break this component down into 4 pieces using my miter saw and table saw and the directions that I laid out myself to make sure that I'm cutting everything correctly. Once cut to size, I use my drum sander to get a snug fit with the overlapping joints and then glued everything together using some corner clamps to make sure that everything is square. And after letting this rest overnight, our first component is finished and we can move on to the next one, which will be the top shelf. This is the easiest component within the project, once again using an 1/8 inch downcut bit and a pocket toolpath to cut 2 mortises at 0.375 inch depth at the bottom of the shelf. You don't need to worry about where you're putting clamps here since the mortises are within the middle of the stock and they shouldn't get in the way. This should take about 3 minutes to carve, and once it's off the machine, we don't need to do any extra work to it, but you can test to make sure that the rails fit into the mortises before moving on to our next and final component, the brackets. I guess you could say that this is the most complicated component since addition to the 1/8 inch bit that we've been using, I also used a 1/4 inch bit to bulk out most of the pockets since they're a bit larger than our other components. Within the CNC files, I also designated a spot where you could add some custom text to spice up your design if you choose to. I just left mine blank though. In addition to pockets, this component also has drilling toolpaths, which are used to mark screw locations that will help secure the shelf to the wall. These aren't totally necessary, but I do think that the precision makes the shelf look a little neater. Similar to the rails, once off the machine, we do need to break this component down into 2 smaller pieces, which will be the top and bottom brackets. But once those are cut, we're ready to get started on the final assembly for this project. I won't show too much on video because it's boring, but I did sand all of the components up to 220 grit sandpaper before assembling them. Once sanded, I glued and clamped everything together and let them cure overnight before coming back the next day and getting ready to add some varnish. I decided to darken this wood up a bit by adding Danish oil, and I have to say, not only does this shelf look nice, but it turned out to be extremely solid, which is what I intended. When it comes to installing this onto the wall, luckily I already have designated screw locations thanks to our CNC drilling toolpaths, and it's as simple as screwing it in place. And with that, here is the final result. That's all I have for today's video, and as always, I thank you all for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.